Hi again, everyone. How's all doing? So, one or two people sent me links in comments or by email recently to the Horns and Whistles Workshop eBay listing for one of these. This is a 5-pole skew-wound direct replacement motor and mount for an old X04 motor. Now, I'd actually spotted these on eBay a wee while ago, but they were out of stock. But recently they came back into stock, so I managed to get hold of one. And I got in touch with Mark of Horns and Whistles Workshop to get his okay to make a video about one of these, to which he agreed, and kindly offered to send me some other items, including a second motor, which was a revised mount. So this second mount is a bit thicker at the front, presumably to make it a bit stronger, and overall it's a little bit shorter as well, so I think it'll be a better fit. So yeah, I was very keen to try one of these. Some of you may remember I had some success mounting Type 7 motors into locomotives that had X03 motors using an old B12 motor mount, and then later some 3D printed mounts. The mount is designed and 3D printed by Mark himself. The motor is imported from China. I think it's used in some N-gauge models. It's a very small motor. The worm gear is from Ultrascale. So yeah, it certainly looks the part. Little flywheel on the back. So Mark has put these little kits together, and in the kit you'll get a wire and a little terminal that will go onto the screw at the back, onto there. Now, I started making a video about fitting this to my old B12 here, and the second motor I fitted to my Flying Scotsman. Now, yeah, I mean, these are not large motors. They're very small, and they kind of have to be able to fit, between the wheels. They have to be the same width as the chassis, essentially. So that's why Mark is using this particular motor. But when I fitted the motors and tested them, what I found was that they ran very fast, a little bit too fast for my liking. But more seriously, they lacked torque. The one on the Flying Scotsman would barely go around the corner at a slow speed. It would go around the corner at speed okay, but when you slowed it down, it just ground to a halt on corners. And on the Flying Scotsman one, on this one, what I found was the worm gear just popped off, because the thicker mount here, the thicker front on the mount, basically reduces the length of available shaft, and it's just not enough to secure the worm gear. So I contacted Mark and fed back to him that I thought that they were running too fast, they lacked torque, and the revised mount was too thick at the front, causing the worm gear to pop off. Another thing I suggested was possibly introducing a cutaway on the underside of the mount there, just to better facilitate the wire when fitting the motor. So Mark was really helpful and patient, and quite happy to get the feedback and willing to rethink things a bit. And he sent me two of these, which are a redesigned mount, and it's also got a new worm gear. This is a single start worm gear. Now, it's very difficult to tell just by looking at them. On this one, the original one, the thread is at a slightly different angle on the worm. On the single start one, the thread is pretty much parallel to the front of the motor there. And the idea is, with this one, that a single turn of the motor will advance the drive gear by a single cog. So that, in theory, should slow it down a bit and possibly improve the torque. And he's also introduced a little cutaway, as I asked. So thanks very, very much to Mark for everything he sent, and for redesigning these following my observations. I'm going to fit this back into the B12 and we'll see how it runs. So I've already fitted a replacement wire here because I already fitted one of these motors, and I had to replace the wire because there wasn't room for the old original wire underneath the motor mount. But now that we've got the cutaway, I would imagine it won't be necessary to replace this wire. You could probably use the existing one. But we do need to fit a wire onto that terminal of the motor to connect to there using the little terminal provided. So we need a little bit of length of wire. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dislodge this motor a bit, because what I found was, trying to solder into there, it's all a bit too cramped. So just very carefully, just turn it and we can expose that terminal there. I'm going to thread the wire through there. Just to keep it all nice and tidy. And then if we put it out through there, like that. See if we can just get that wire to poke through that terminal. Like that. Just make it easier to solder on. That should do it. And if I just pull that wire through. So I can now cut the other end of this wire, like so, and strip it. And then we can fit this little terminal. Which again, I could feed the wire through the little hole. Should really use my helping hands for this, but there we go. Okay, I'm just going to file where it will slide into the chassis. I have found they're a wee bit of a tight fit, and it'll probably vary from locomotive to locomotive. I'm just going to give that a wee bit of a file. Okay, let's see if that fits now. There we go, that slides in. There we go. Just make sure that wire is not touching the flywheel. And now all we need to do is solder this wire onto the terminal on the top of the motor. There we go. Okay, pop this onto the test track. And away it goes. Let's go and stick it around the loop. Okay, so I've hooked it up to its tender and some coaches just to give it a decent test. Let's just turn on the power. Let's put it up to full speed. So that's definitely an awful lot better than it was. I think that single start worm has made all the difference. It's slowed it down a lot and has really improved the torque. You know, there's no slow down there in the corners, even with a rake of coaches. Whereas before, you know, just the locomotive on its own was slowing down. So yeah, that's a huge improvement. Here's the other revised motor fitted into the Flying Scotsman. Let's turn on the power. Yeah, that's a huge difference. This would barely run with the first motor around the corners. So there we are. If you're looking to replace an old X04 motor like this in any of your locos, this is definitely an option. At £35 plus postage, it's not exactly cheap, but you know, I wouldn't say it's overly expensive, you know, all things considered. I'll leave a link to the Horns and Whistles workshop eBay listing for it in the description below, and also a link to their YouTube channel, so please check them out. Of course, there is a question of why would you want to replace the original motor? What's wrong with this? Um, some of them are absolutely fine. You can be very lucky and get one that's got good bearings and a well-balanced armature, and it'll be reasonably quiet and run quite smoothly, and there's no real reason to replace it. But I've heard some of them that sound absolutely horrendous. So this is a good solution to that problem. Also, if you're converting to DCC, then one of these newer motors is a good idea because it's going to pull fewer amps, it's going to run smoother and quieter, and that's what you want for DCC. Is this going to run as well as a brand new model? No, it isn't. You've still got fairly crude drive gear, axles, and wheel set. The new models are made with much more precision and will be much more efficient all round. But to get an old model running quieter and smoother is always a good thing in my book. So for that reason alone, sometimes replacing one of these is a good idea. Would I fit it to a model that had an X04 that ran fairly quiet and smooth already? Probably not. It's nice to keep models as original as possible, but as I say, if noise is an issue, then that's a good idea. Is there any way this could get improved further? I think I'd like to see the motor come forward just a little bit. I think you could possibly do that by just taking away the corners there and there on the mount. That would allow the motor to come forward a bit. But yeah, I might experiment with that. But I mean, it does work fine as it is. But yeah, is this something I would recommend? Absolutely, particularly if you have a favourite old model that makes too much noise, or as I say, if you want to convert it to DCC, then I would certainly recommend trying one of these. I'll certainly be fitting one to my old LMS2P because it can be a bit noisy, and any others that I acquire that sound like coffee grinders. I think this could also fit X03 motors. It would need a different worm. But I think the worm that fits the old Hornby Pacer and the turntable would probably fit. So I think it could be made to work with an X03 motor as well. So thanks very much to Mark of Horns and Whistles Workshop for sending me everything and for putting up with my nitpicking. But for me to be able to recommend this, I wanted it to work as well as possible. I know Marcus had a lot of good feedback on them, so hopefully he'll get more ready for sale soon. But please do check out his YouTube channel, and as I say, the link to the eBay listing for these will be in the description below. All right, okay folks, catch you later.